Hello there. Niiamah Shang here, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of your journey. Today, we are going to be really diving into an experience of leadership, an experience of ownership, an experience of showing up in a way of creating impact through the work that you do. And I have brought on someone here that I'm excited to introduce all of you to. Uh, this person, his name is Kaushik Bose, and he's the founder and the person behind Brainbox, which is a leadership podcast. We're going to spend our time together, like really exploring both each other and like what it means to be an outlier and a leader together. Right? Like, how can we continue to take the things about ourselves that make us an outlier and choose to incorporate that into our leadership, into in our own profound, authentic, and unique style of getting results and helping other people to be able to live out the vision. So I'm excited for this conversation. Kaushik, it is an absolute pleasure to be in conversation with you. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thanks so much, Niiamah, for having me on the show as well. Really looking forward to a very interesting podcast.
Yeah, so am I. And it's funny because I look at this, I'm like, as long as we have a great conversation, everything works, right? So
absolutely.
Let's do this here. I love to give people a chance to, I call it speak yourself into the room, right? Throughout this conversation, you're going to hear me likely reflect back how you've been showing up for me in this conversation. And that's my way of, it's my gift to you to be like, hey, this is my experience of you, right? And that being said, I also love to give some space for some some practicalities of like life for you. So if you can, just share a little bit about yourself here so we can just get to know you a bit.
Sure. So I'll start with something which probably people don't guess too often. I'm 43, and basically I was basically in the B2B kind of an environment. I was with the IT behemoths, Wipro, SAP, IBM, and GBM in Dubai for the first 14 years of my corporate life. And then following that, I don't know, something just happened, and I wanted to try something new. So that's when we relocated back to India. Me and my wife, we started a couple of startups, built that for about 4 years into a franchise kind of a network as well. And then we exited from there. Then right now I'm currently and that's actually when the podcasting thing also happened from 21. It's not as early as you from 2015. So you are quite the veteran. But yes, mine started in 21. And then, of course, now I'm the chief business officer of another category creator in the EV space called Green Tiger. So with my MBA batchmate.
This is fascinating to me. Like, you had multiple startups, you exited in there. You said you started the podcast along the way. Was that like right when when you got into the startups, or was it like as your journey was going, then you said, hey, you know what, this is going to be an outlet that I want to also continue with?
So funny story here. I actually exited my startup, and that's when I started, helping out, shall I say, my wife's startup as well to help it scale faster.
Yes.
And that's the time, after a while, she was like, it's fine. Why don't you just focus on something else to keep you busy and give me some space?
Yeah, it's so cool because like in my mind, I'm like, wow, working with your wife, that's the dream. And then I'm like, you know what? I can understand that. Like, I'm pretty sure I can see that.
So that's actually how it happened. And then, of course, I'm a huge Gary Vee fan as well. And he, was mentioning in one of his podcasts, why don't you should do more and more podcasts, excellent networking opportunities, excellent opportunities to learn from better people. So that's how it started. It started just as a pure passion project. And now it's currently into season 14. And I think in fact, it's been voted 9th best pan-India in 2022 by Spotify as well. So going better than expected.
Nicely done. Well, like that goes to a testament to you, both your ongoing work and to actually getting the thing started, right? And so I see you in that action there. And to hear, it's funny you mentioned Gary Vee. Like, it's like the person has a whole lot of followers, but not every follower takes action, right? And so to like just be in space with you as one of the action takers is really quite enjoyable. So Brainbox, so it's Brainbox : the leadership podcast. And so I wanted to start off firstly and just like get a sense from you. You're doing startups. You had a corporate career beforehand. You went into startups, you exited your own, you joined your wife's, you exited that, like then you like now you're starting up you're working with people and starting up a new category out here. I guess my question is like, given all that, why is leadership like the thing that sits at the core of all this for you?
So when I was in, like, for example, I started off in sales, right, in my corporate life. So what I realized is, and I was primarily an individual contributor and had pretty decent results, in the sense, pretty good results around it. But somehow there was something missing. So that's, of course, I started leading telesales team also along the way. But then I realized that this is something that, just especially in the sales kind of a field where it's primarily you're running after numbers, you have to have a bigger purpose, to start with the why kind of a thing. And that's the reason we started the startups of ours as well. And primarily, it was very interesting because it was a completely B2C environment we started. So it was a radical change. And again, I'll be candid. I was pretty bad initially, when it comes as a the leadership perspective. And then I started noticing lots of things with my wife, the way she was leading her startup. And I was like, the HR in her company is so different from the way I would be, pretty much metric driven in mind. And that's when I realized that probably leadership is something which is very easy, to put on paper and say that, this is how it should be. But when it comes to actually practicing it in real life, that's when the challenge comes. So like I mentor found startups as well, as a just time pass and to help the others as well. And that's what I realized, that leadership is something which many people would be wanting to do, should be doing, but they don't. And it's definitely easier said than done. Another thing I wanted to also highlight in this is that the usual perception is that if somebody's a leader, they have achieved phenomenal success and they've never failed. And I think you cannot be further from the truth in this. Failure is a part of life. And I think this, especially in India, and I mean, it needs to be ingrained for the younger generation as well, that you have to fail to be able to succeed. So that's where I think leaders like you, me, we interview bigger leaders, and then that's how the entire the thought process and the sharing happens.
So let me jump in on this one, because you said like leaders, we have to fail, and I think about this a lot. And sometimes failing, like I feel like I'm finally stepping into the part of like my own like entrepreneurship journey and my leadership journey where I'm like, oh, I get it. It's not like I'm just like there's a difference between being willing to fail and then wanting to fail, right? And nowadays I'm in the space of like, I want to fail, not because I'm like, oh, I want this to like not work, but mainly because I'm like, I know whatever I start out with is gonna fail. Like it's just like unless I somehow hit the jackpot lottery, like it's not going to be successful. And it'd be actually kind of bad sometimes if it does like just start off on rocket fire, because I'm like, either I don't know why, and I'm like, I have this like one hit wonder that like went viral for a day and then like we weren't able to sustain it, or I don't have the infrastructure, the operations in place, right, the leadership in place to be able to like handle the demand of like if everything actually came in all at once, right? So there's an element here of like actually being in a space of wanting to fail. And I told you this before we got started. One of my general approaches with every conversation is to model the future we want to see in the present. Meaning here, that's like, all right, I'm about world of difference. I want to I want to not just hear about it, but like experience it. So can we just like, if you're down for this year, I'd love for us each here, I won't leave you hanging. I'd love for us each to just share like a recent leadership failure that we've had, and like some of the things that we're doing right now to address it, or if it's happened recently and you've already addressed it, go on with that. But I just want to kind of make that real here, where it's like, look, it's not that we like it's happening, like even right now with two people who like number 9 Pan Asian like podcast, like we're still making mistakes, we're still failing on a regular basis. I'll start first, and then let me slow down just a bit. Would you be interested in playing in this way?
Absolutely, sounds great.
Cool. All right, cool. Let's make it real. I'll play first here. Okay. I'm great. Like, I'm actually happy to think like, oh yeah, I have a lot of failures that are in place right now. We're running a lot of different experiments inside of the business, and it's fine. It's cool to finally be in that place to be able to say we're running experiments and things are working, things are not. So I'm not actually looking at the lead like that from like what's failures in the business, but I'm actually going to look at this from failures in my leadership. And I think that the one of the ones that I'm experiencing right now is that I'm working with, we have a team, and it's a great team out there. And where I am finding is that like I love to talk. It's part of the reason why I do podcasts. Um, However, the ways that I communicate and try and like communicate my vision, try and give people like the space and autonomy to be able to come up with their own like unique but aligned solutions to the problems that we're trying to solve. I've been finding recently that like my approach to it has been actually not setting people up for success, right? We can have candidly, like we can have just conversations that just last, they don't end, and then at the end of it, we go and we look at the results that come from it, and it's like more or less the same, like the needle hasn't moved. And it's like so the failure that I'm experiencing right now, and this is the place that I'm one of the things I'm working on, is saying, how could I move from being a leader who like I don't think it's their fault. All right. And so it's like I look at it as like, all right, in what ways am I not showing up as the leader that they need in order to be successful? And then one of them here is like, oh, like I have to get back. I used to work in consulting. Like, I have to get back to PowerPoints. I have to get back to like really what they need right now is a manager,
True.
and so now it's time for me to build out what is the systems? How are we managing this? What are the processes that are involved in it? It's important work, just work that I hadn't been doing for a while. And I've been seeing it on my team where it's just like the projects we ever taken on just weren't coming to life in like the levels that they should be. So that's one thing right now that I'm working through on my end.
It's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Like, is that specific enough? Let me make sure that it passes your bar in terms of like does that feel real in terms of a share, or do I need to go and share anything more, or do you have any even questions on it if we needed to unpack that any?
It's very interesting, but I just wanted to understand what have you, what made you realize it, and what exactly are you sort of, doing around it?
Yeah. So what made me realize it was actually a completely different experience outside of work. I had gone to I love to learn in unorthodox ways because I like to work with unorthodox people. And so someone that I know, his name is Clinton Swain. He runs a business called Frontier Trainings, and they have this program called Play to Win. And the program inside of it, you go for days to play, like literal games, and the games are done in a way to help train you on different leadership, entrepreneurship, and speaking skills, and this and other things. But you're playing games. Like I have a medal right here in front of me of one of the games that came in, and I got the medal, but it like because I stepped into leadership for that game. However, my team came in that game from like probably second to last on that, right? We scored about 1,500 points, right? The number one team scored about 67,000 or something like that,
Whoa.
like, yeah. So like we were like when you see those kinds of results, you recognize that like it's not about skill, it's that person was playing a very different game. In general, they're playing a very different game, and I recognize that like I don't even know how to play the game that person was playing. Like I wasn't like, does that make sense when I say that? Like it's like
Absolutely.
so far out. I'm like, I don't even know how to get 3,000 points, let alone 60. So what came from it was I in the middle of it, it's like they put you in different rounds. You're getting this like high more stress experience, and I realized that like I could see everything that needed to get done, but my team members kept coming to me. I was the leader of the team. They kept coming to me like, okay, what do I need to do now? What do I need to do this time? What do I need to do this time? I'm like, it's the same thing. Like like this like you heard what we said, you heard what we promised, like go and execute on it. And I could feel myself in the moment like being like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go and play in all these different places right now. And that's when I looked at it and I said, this is my leadership gap. Like my leadership gap is like I can galvanize, I can get people behind, but the real test of leadership is like, can you help other people get results without you?
Absolutely.
And so I thought about that, and I thought about like okay, look, I read everything beforehand. I got things ready, like, but I could have done something different to help them read it. Maybe I could have created a spreadsheet because the rules were there. Maybe I could have created a spreadsheet and said, if I say this, like you put this number in, you put this number in, and it'll just tell you what to go do. So instead of coming to ask me, you can put it into the spreadsheet, and now you have a tool to go get it done. And I just started thinking in those kind of ways to say, like, I noticed that was in a game environment, right? But it's these things translate, right? Otherwise, what's the point? And I realized like I was doing something similar with my team and also with my clients, where it's like, I was like, I can do more to give them the tools to be able to be successful without me. And that's where I started. And once I started to look through that lens, I started to realize like, oh, I'm leaning very heavily on my talking. I'm leaning here, like so on and so forth. What do I need to go and create? How can I help make this more concrete? And how can I help? We're in the process right now of becoming a learning organization. I'm like, oh, I like, yeah, it's like I have to teach you how to learn, if that makes sense. But like on the meta part, like how do you learn forever rather than just learn this one thing? So I'll leave it at that. Like, did that answer the question? Did I miss a part in there?
No, absolutely. But just an interesting point. How do you really, because I think this is a very core issue you have raised, right? Especially when it comes to leading the team. So you will have people with different levels. So there'll be some people who will want to grow and they will pick up things very quickly. And there'll be many others who will just not want to learn at the pace that you will need or that you would like to have, right?
Yeah.
So how do you really balance this? Because this is something which is, I mean, I think it happens to all of us. So at times you start beating your head, like, why can't we just figure this out? But then exactly the point you're saying, you want to scale. So how do you actually balance that out?
Yeah, so I don't have a large team, so I want to first preface that right now. But one of the things that I think has worked in my benefit from this has just been like with the people that we decided to bring on. In the hiring process, one of the number one things we look for is that like growth orientation. I worked at a tech company before starting my own business, and I had been an actuarial consultant beforehand at a large tech consulting company. And so moving from the actuarial world, retirement actuarial world, over to working in a tech company where like it was advertising technology, there wouldn't have seemed to have been any like real overlap. But the person who hired me was very much like, look, ad tech is a fairly new field. It's less than a decade, it's less than a real decade old at the time I was going in, right? And so it's like most people aren't going to know. They're going to come in as ad tech experts, So what we need are people who are in like self-starters in the very beginning. We can teach you the ad tech and you will learn that. We will teach you that, but we can't teach you to care. We can't teach you to be self-starter. We can't teach you to go research your own work. I'm like, or we could, but it would just be like, to your point, a lot of people have their own dispositions towards it. And typically I found that when you do have to teach those kinds of things, it's their next employer that gets the benefit of that. Like, you get what I'm saying? So that's one of the areas that it's come in. It's not to say that like, as I've done this, my team, like everything's been working out exactly right. There's been a lot of growing pains because I had created something where the world we were creating wasn't different enough, right? It was like the level of impact that we were going for, you could go by, like people were able to go by with what they had, and we could have minimal levels of growth. And now we're in like rapid growth, rapid learning phases, and it wouldn't have been possible if the people that I chose to work with didn't already exhibit a hunger and a desire to keep learning. So that's, in this case here, knowing that like I have a lot more autonomy about who I'm choosing to work with, so on and so forth. The team's not that large, so on and so forth. But it's made all the difference. And it's the thing that I will continue to do as I go on, especially as those who are working with me. Yeah.
Makes sense.
What comes to you as I share some of this here? I appreciate this. It's fun. It's fun talking to other people who are used to asking questions here. So it's fun from that perspective. What was flowing through you? Like, we still need to get your leadership failure, but let's just, in response to anything that I said so far, what's something that either struck you or explained?
it raised some great points, right? Like one would be the hiring itself, like you mentioning that you have, when you're very careful with the hiring, I think. And again, I would like to quote Gary Vee again here, who says, hire fast, fire faster, and promote fastest. So I think I completely agree. I mean, that's something that just happens. But yes, I think it's a very key point that also happens. Also, I think the point that you mentioned is, I think there's a lot of patience that goes into it. So you need to be careful. You need to be actually, you know, like the way you mentioned that after a while, you're like, oh, why can't I just automate it? But yes, you definitely need that level of patience as well, where you can actually guide your team and get them to perform. So I think it's a very interesting example that you chose. And keeping that in mind, maybe I should have gone first.
No. There's just bring it. Like this is important for me because it's one of the lovely things about being in a world of difference is that different doesn't mean better, right? It just means different. True. Right? And so there's you've entered a comparison-free world, and maybe you should I just want to kind of keep that kind of space here, and just like I'm just really curious about like your leadership failure here, what you want to bring in, no matter what it is, we're good.
So since you've covered a great example, right? So we've discussed on the most of the facets that come in this. So I'll digress a little out here. So, right. So I would say it's the work-life balance. So when we were having our own startups, right? So my wife, she's Arpita. So she was running her own startup. I was into mine. And then at a stage it happened when I sold off mine and I didn't have much to do. So I started sort of, interfering a lot in her business as well. Like, why not scale faster? She was much more careful with her growth. She wanted, if she's franchising it to anyone also, they should be able to make money, so on and so forth. And what happened with me was I wanted faster growth, especially since I'd done it once. What tends to happen with startup founders is that most of them struggle to get that one win. And if you actually do get lucky and get that first win, then it's like anything I touch will, turn gold. And what I landed up eventually realizing is that we would be talking about business right from 6 in the morning when we're going to get up till about 11:30, 12 when we went to sleep. And by the way, Arpita and me, like we share, she's my best friend without a doubt. So it was surprising. So, I mean, after a while, she sort of, that's when she told me that, I can't take this, where we're just talking about only work for 20 hours in a day. And we need to just take a step back from the just talking about work all day. And I think that's when it actually hit me that work-life balance is something which is highly underrated. And just interestingly, just last week only, I was interviewing someone and he actually mentioned a very interesting phrase. He said, it's not work-life balance. It's more of a work-life, where you have those 20 hours and you're able to work for some time and you're also having your own life in the same time. So it's more like where the two of them are congregating and are working together. So that was a very interesting, and I think this is, again, I think my biggest leadership failure, which of course I have learned from, but yes, I think I would definitely rate this as that.
And so what do you think that you learned the most from this experience? And what do you think changed the most from you from that?
I think the first is that everybody is different, right? So for me, the way I work is like, from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. that time, I'm just thinking, and most of the times it'll happen that even if I'm sitting and reading a book and I read something, I'm like, oh, why can't I just use this in that particular scenario? Or why don't I change my strategy and try this? Arpita, on the other hand, is very clear. Right? So by the way, she's a certified yoga instructor. She's a certified nutritionist as well. So she's into the wellness. Right now, she has the wellness startup as well. So, but then I realized, so she tends to switch off on days. So she'll, for example, if she'd say that, let's say tomorrow is a holiday, and she'll just switch off completely, enjoy her TV, probably whatever. I mean, just play around with the iPad. But I think that's something that is very interesting. So even in the team, what happens is that you start to realize that there are some people who can work all through the day. So in India, especially, it's a very common culture that you're just going to call people. So you will have people, bosses calling their subordinates probably 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11 at night. Doesn't make a difference. This is something that my boss in Dubai actually taught me. So Fridays were holidays there. So whenever he would call me on a Friday, he would start by saying, you know what, Kaushik, I'm sorry to disturb you on a holiday, but I need these 2 minutes. So that is something that, that's when it highlighted to me that every person is different. Every person has different ways of working. And that's where you need to be a leader to figure out what works for the particular person.
Feel you on that. That's like, it's interesting because as you say that, it makes me think back to my, well, it actually just like refreshes something inside of me. And I was fortunate. I worked with some really great organizations to start out with, where like the company culture, either they were the people helping people learn like how to lead and how to bring like make the culture work. I've always worked in human capital or people. So when I was a consultant, I was in the human capital world. When I was in tech, I was in the people world. So I've always worked with this either individuals and the collection of individuals toward like how do you move things in that format. And what comes for me is the way. There's 2 things. One of them is the design, like the leadership design, right? Because I think about this from the outliers that are listening to this, and the question goes to my mind is like, what's the way that you want to design your leadership? So right now we're talking work-life balance in this case here, right? And it's like, okay, what you had learned, what you had experienced, and what had worked for you, because you had done it already to exit, right? Like in your design was we can just make this work from 6 a.m. to 11 o'clock, like whenever it's on, it's on. Your wife had a different design. She's like, for the organization I'm building, like, in my mind, since she's doing wellness, I'm like, well, part of wellness is like being able to turn on and off and not having it all, like, so on and so forth. And so I could hear like there's some components of that feel like, oh, like that is intentionally designed, and the team carries out and also like it comes through the culture that way. So as it's making me think right now around, and this is something I also invite to anyone that's any outlier that's listening right now. So think about what are you designing through your leadership? What's the culture that you're doing? What's the unspoken rules around how things get done with you? Is it we're putting out fires? No matter what we do it, let's make it work. And as a result, we don't need a plan in advance because we're going to always be on, so on and so forth. It's really, I find it really interesting to think about it from like the overall leadership perspective. And then when I think about it from like the world of difference kind of lens, or the world of difference kind of twist, which is, it's like, what is it about you and the way that you get things done, or you like, or the culture you want to be building with the people you lead, whether it's on your team or even with your clients? Like, how can we be looking to create more intentionality with it? I think we're both here talking out for like with me with like, how can I actually help my team be successful in bringing a vision to life, and you with work-life balance? It's like, how can we be more intentional about what it is that we are creating it and how that comes to life? What are your thoughts on that? Anything to add to that? Anything that's running through you?
No, I think that's absolutely great. So like, for example, within my team also, that's a point that I highlight a lot is that I don't like surprises, right? So within the team, let's be transparent. Let's not hear anything from somebody else. Let's have that level of trust within the team, and mistakes happen. So that's part of the way things work. And once it happens, then it's something that we can collectively fix. But if you try and put things or mistakes that have happened you try and sweep them under the carpet. So what happens is eventually there's that distrust that happens. Somebody tells you something about. So I think trust and openness is very, very critical in anything. And this is something that's why I am very clear, even from a work-life harmony, if I can call it, even from that aspect, that you need to understand what the other person likes and dislikes, and then you tweak the entire model around that.
Yeah, well, this is cool. I'm enjoying our conversation. It's been nice to just like sit back and like really look at this and examine a bit of ourselves as leaders and such. It's interesting, Kaushik, because it's I appreciate leadership like as it in its craft, so I can look at leadership and be like, oh, what is being done, and oh, they're applying like this framework and so on and so forth. But I really gain from being with other leaders and just making it real, and so I appreciate you sharing and bringing in your experience with it, and in asking me questions, because one of the things that I find as a leader is that like I don't often get enough questions to help me unpack what it is that I'm actually doing. It's like, but how did you know? Good question. I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation. We're coming up to the end of our time here right now, and what I want to do is give some space right now for a few things. One, for anyone who's listening to this and it's like, I like the way Kaushik thinks. I like what he's up to. He mentioned some of the things that he's doing right now, and I like to stay in his world. Can you share? Like what's like the big thing that you're working on? What keeps you excited? What's the thing that like, if your brain's going from 6 to 11, what's the thing that's like, okay, yeah, this is really exciting to me? And then two, if someone wants to continue down the conversation with you, continue down the path, what's the best way for them to do that?
Perfect. So I'll take the second one first. That's easier. I'm primarily very, very active on LinkedIn. So it's my profile is www.linkedin.com/in/Kaushik-Bose. So that's the easier one to answer. And from what happens from the morning to the evening, there are quite a few aspects to it. One, of course, is as I mentioned, so I'm the CBO for Green Tiger, which is a category creator in the EV space. So we are the world's first. So if you have, for example, a normal two-wheeler, ungeared scooter, so this is something in which we are able to add the electric powertrain to the petrol model itself. So we've created the world's first iHybrid or independent hybrid. So that's something we've got funding and we're beginning to build that model up as well. Other than that, of course, Brainbox is something that's always near and dear to my heart. My wife's wellness project, of course, where we're probably going to start something on the wellness podcasting as well. So that's primarily where it is. I love experimenting, so marketing, trying out different things on the branding front as well. So that's primarily it.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely awesome. And then Kaushik, I'm gonna conclude with the question I ask everyone when we end here, and it's really like a gift for you to yourself, right? I think you might. Well, let me just say this. I don't want to preface anything. I call it the time capsule question. And essentially here, what I like to do is like, you've had your experience through business, you've had the experience through life up until this point, right? And there's something that has gotten you to here that has served you well. There may be a day in the future where you might need to like be reminded of like just the core things that just like helps Kaushik be successful in the world, right? To be you, whatever it is that like really drives you through. So what's the message that you would lead for yourself that you might like need to hear 5-10 years down the line, and just be happy that you were able to be reminded?
Quite an interesting question. I think it'll primarily be that you've tried your best. I think that's the thing. I mean, you try 10 different things. You go with the assumption that 7 of them will not work. It's just like in startups, right? 7 do not work, 2 work, and 1 will actually just make everything worthwhile. So I think that's the thing with everything. You just try. You should, as you mentioned also, right? You should expect failures. You should try and improve the system. You should be better than what you were, let's say, 1 day earlier. Forget about a year earlier. So I think that's about it. You should just keep growing, or evolve, whichever works.
I like that. Grow or evolve, whichever works there. Kaushik, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm glad that we are getting to know each other. Thank you for bringing your experience. Thank you for bringing your expertise. Thank you for bringing your like, I'm gonna say your being into this conversation. It's been actually really just like grounded and fun having this conversation with you. I'm looking forward to where things grow from here. All right.
Thanks so much, Niiamah. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you as well.
Take care.